And we're back, folks, with more news in an hour. President Donald Trump is making this government shutdown unlike any the nation has ever seen, giving his budget office rare authority to pick winners and losers, who gets paid or fired, which programs are cut or survive, in an unprecedented restructuring across the federal workforce. As the shutdown enters its third week, the Office of Management and Budget said Tuesday it's preparing to batten down the hatches, with more reductions in force to come. The president calls Budget Chief Russ Vought the Grim Reaper, and Vought has seized on the opportunity to fund Trump's priorities, paying the military while slashing jobs in health, education, the sciences, and other areas, with actions that have been criticized as illegal and are facing court challenges. Trump said programs favored by Democrats are being targeted and they are never going to come back in many cases. Speaking during an event at the White House, Trump added, "We're going to be able to do things that we were unable to do before." With Congress at a standstill, the Republican-led House refusing to return to session, and the Senate stuck in a loop of failed votes to reopen government as Democrats demand health care funding, the Budget Office quickly filled the void. Vought, a chief architect of the conservative Project 2025 policy book, is reshaping the size and scope of federal government in ways similar to those envisioned in the blueprint. It is exactly what certain lawmakers, particularly Democrats, feared if Congress failed to fund the government. Trump's priorities, supporting the military and pursuing his mass deportation agenda, have been largely uninterrupted despite the closures. The administration found leftover tariff revenues to ensure the Women, Infants, and Children Food Aid Program did not shutter. But the Trump administration is shuttering scores of other programs, firing workers, handling special education and after-school programs, and those guarding the nation's infrastructure from cyber attacks. More than 4,100 federal workers received layoff notices over this past weekend. This shutdown is different from earlier ones because Donald Trump and Russ Vought and all of their cronies are using this moment to terrorize these patriotic federal employees, said Senator Chris Van Hollen, the Democrat from Maryland, standing with federal workers Tuesday outside the White House budget office. Van Hollen said it's a big fat lie when Trump and his budget director say the shutdown is making them fire federal workers. It is also illegal, and we will see them in court, he said. Now on its 14th day, by the time you're hearing this, 15th day, the federal closure is quickly becoming one of the largest and longest government shutdowns. Congress failed to meet the October 1st deadline to pass the annual appropriations bills needed to fund the government as the Democrats demanded a deal to preserve expiring health care funds that provide subsidies for people to purchase insurance through the Affordable Care Act. House Speaker Mike Johnson said Tuesday he has nothing to negotiate with Democrats until they vote to reopen the government. The Republican Speaker welcomed the Office of Management and Budget's latest actions to pay some workers and fire others. They have every right to move the funds around, Johnson said at a press conference at the Capitol. If the Democrats want to challenge the Trump administration in court, Johnson said, bring it. Well, they will. Typically, federal workers are furloughed during a lapse in funding, traditionally with back pay once government funding is restored. But Vaught's budget office announced late last week that the reductions in force had already begun. Some 750,000 employees are being furloughed. At the same time, Trump instructed the military to find money to ensure service personnel wouldn't miss paychecks this week. The Pentagon said over the weekend it was able to tap $8 billion in unused research and development funds to make payroll. On Tuesday, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said her agency was relying on Trump's big tax cuts law for funding to make sure members of the Coast Guard are also paid. We at DHS worked out an innovative solution, Noem said in a statement. Thanks to Trump's one big beautiful bill, she said, the brave men and women of the U.S. Coast Guard will not miss a paycheck this week. In past shutdowns, the Office of Management and Budget has overseen agency plans during the lapse in federal funding, ensuring which workers are essential and remain on the job. Vought, however, has taken his role further by speaking openly about his plans to go after the entire federal workforce. As agencies started making their shutdown plans, Vaught's Office of Management and Budget encouraged department heads to consider reductions in force and unheard of action. The Budget Office's General Counsel, Mark Paoletta, suggested in a draft memo that the workforce may not be automatically eligible for back pay once government reopens. Trump posted an AI-generated video last week that portrayed Vought wearing a cloak and carrying a scythe against the backdrop of the classic rock staple, "Don't Fear the Reaper." Every authoritarian leader has had his Grim Reaper. Russell Vought is Donald Trump's, said Representative Steny Hoyer, the senior Democrat from Maryland. Hoyer compared the budget chief to billionaire Elon Musk wielding a chainsaw earlier this year during the Department of Government Efficiency's slashing of the workforce. Vought swings his scythe through the federal government as thoughtlessly, he said. In many ways, Trump's tax cuts law gave the White House a vast new allotment of federal funding for its priority projects, separate from the regular appropriations process in Congress. The package unleashed some $175 billion for the Pentagon, including for the Golden Dome missile shield and other priority projects, and another $175 million for Homeland Security, largely for Trump's mass deportation agenda. It also included extra funds for Vaught's work at the Office of Management and Budget. Certain funds from the bill are available to be used during the shutdown, according to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. The administration also could decide to use mandatory funding provided in the 2025 Reconciliation Act or other sources of mandatory funding to continue activities funded by those direct appropriations at various agencies, according to the Congressional Budget Office. The CBO cited the Departments of Defense, Treasury, and Homeland Security and the Office of Management and Budget as among those that received funds under the law. We're going to take another break for a few words from our sponsors. When we come back, we have LGBTQ plus news to share, including the sweet queer history of ice cream you probably have never heard. And we'll be back after these messages.